Hey there, welcome back. This is Shireen. We're back with another Adobe Illustrator tutorial. We're using Adobe Illustrator for fashion-related purposes, fashion and textile-related purposes. We're creating surface designs. And from my video prior to this one, where we were able to isolate motifs and work with the pattern maker function in Illustrator, I've now kind of edited that grouping and kind of chosen some of the patterns that I think are sort of the most successful from that grouping. Once again, if you are just joining us, I would recommend, if you're not familiar with the pattern maker, I would recommend checking out the video before this one, and I'll be sure to put the link in the comments below. But for now, we've created our patterns. We're ready to move them into colorways, working with our own color palette. As you recall, when we were creating the patterns, you can see here that the patterns, the surface designs, the repeats have no background. So this has this invisible background, and we weren't creating a background tile. So I just want to show you why we don't have to worry about that background tile. It's actually a feature when we're going to start coloring up our swatches where we can actually work sort of within the tile to give another option to get to that background color another way. So you'll see what I mean. Stay tuned. But for right now, let's get started with our very first swatch. We created these in grayscale just to kind of focus on the pattern, and now we're ready to move them into color. So selecting our first swatch, the way that we need to edit the original motifs, the original artwork, would be either to select the swatch that has the pattern, and you would see that show up here in the fill like we see here. We can drag and drop from the fill right onto the artboard, and then here's where we see the actual original artwork. We can't edit color through here because this is not our pattern. This is a swatch or a rectangle shape filled with a pattern. This is our original artwork with anchor points. So we recognize when we see anchor points, we know that that's editable. Okay, so one way to access the original artwork is either to drag and drop from the fill, or alternatively, another way is to drag and drop from your swatches panel to bring that, I drag and drop from the swatches panel. So if we've got this original artwork with anchor points, we're going to need some colors. So once again, as a review, bringing in other colors looks like coming to the side of the swatches panel with your options, select swatch library, and you would go to other library. And for me, let me go find, here's a sample color palette, and I can grab a library of the colors from another document. And you see here they're already named and ready to go. I could also look at them as list view, so I can read the names if that's easier. Okay, and I see all my colors are ready to go there. So for me to access the particular colors, I'm going to be working with the magic wand. So this is a review of how to kind of set your magic wand settings. Magic wand, I'm going to choose tolerance 0. And then I'm going to start basically selecting my artwork and choosing from my own color palette. So let's get started. I'm going to select that darkest gray first. Let's call that one mulberry. Mulberry. And maybe that second gray. Really zoom in. Here's that lighter gray. Got it. Let that lighter gray be. We want to make it haze so it can really show up, okay? Or actually, let's do blush. Ooh, I think that's pretty. All right. Now, you'll notice, though, that when my mouse hovers over, I'm going to put away my magic wand settings. Here's my original artwork. I've got anchor points. I'm able to select with my magic wand the different colors. But look here. You see that there's a square shape. That square shape is an active shape. If I use my white direct select tool, I can actually click on it. That shape, though, as you see, has no fill, no stroke, and that's really important. That shape is what Illustrator created in order to create sort of a masking effect so that only what falls within the tile of that shape becomes my pattern and everything else gets cut off, and that's what allows us to create seamless repeats. So when we have a pattern, whether we create this shape that has no fill, no stroke ourselves, or whether we let Illustrator do it. That's the functionality that allows it to be read as a tile repeat. Okay, so when I'm working with my magic wand, I do want to be careful not to put any color into that tile. It's really important that there always be that shape. That shape is actually also too all the way to the back. So when we do a range, we would do a send to back. That tile should never come to the front. It has to be the furthest back most element. Okay, so I'm kind of really harping on it, but without that tile, we'll lose the functionality of the pattern. Okay, so if I now have as a group, and also too, when Illustrator created this tile, it grouped everything for me, which is fine, great. So now I'm just gonna pick that right back up. I think this one was called, what did we call this one? This one was called PF2, I think it was Petite Fleur. So we can just drag and drop this now with the new colors, and again, I can double click. It'll put me into pattern making mode, but it's okay. I can call it PF, let's call it colorway CW1. Okay, I can go ahead and say done because I haven't done anything. I didn't do any manipulation. I just wanted to name my swatch. So now I've got PF2, let me just double click again, PF2, colorway 1. Now I'm going to hit done. So normally when we were working and creating our repeats, we were hitting cancel because we didn't want to overwrite the original swatch pattern, but this time pattern swatch, but this time since we haven't done anything, all we did was rename it, so we are overwriting it just to rename it. So what have we got? We've got PF2 colorway 1. So that's great. So I can actually delete this out, don't need it. Let me go ahead and grab this next tile so we can kind of review that again. I'm going to drag and drop either from here or from my fill. Okay, so either of those, equally the same thing, dragging and dropping. And look what Illustrator did, right? So if you recall, I kind of just had that one flower working in pattern maker mode, but in order for it to create this overlap, it just kind of had to pull as many motifs as possible. And if I look at this, sort of the skeleton view, right? So this is what it looks like as a preview. This is what would print. But what do the paths look like? That's called view outline. Ah, see that? There's that box. That box there should be the furthest backmost element, and it's got no fill and no stroke. And that's what allows us to create these patterns. So just being cognizant of that, I'm now going to continue carrying on with my magic wand. I'm going to grab my colors and continue to keep creating some different colorways. So let's do this time, let's do a fun pink, and then that darker gray can become rust. And then I think this is sort of a pretty combination. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop. And by the way, this is my swatch library. I can't drag and drop into the library. See that? No, don't even think about it sign, right? But I can drag and drop into my swatches panel. So remember to kind of keep tracking between the two. So now I've got, this one was called PF3. So let's go ahead and double click. We're in pattern maker mode. We're going to call this PF3. Yep, say okay. PF3, and this one is colorway 1, right, for PF3. So this is PF2 was our first print, PF3 is our second. I'm going to go ahead and hit done because I am overwriting it. I'm just overriding it by changing the name. I haven't done any reconfigure of the motif. I'm going to get rid of that one, and let's start creating some swatches so you can see how that looks. Okay, and that one is originally PF2 colorway 1, looks like that. This one was PF3 colorway 1. Oh wait, what happened? Oh no, I think I somehow grabbed, oh well, I'm glad you kind of got to see the mistake. So I think I somehow grabbed that that box that's in the back. So let's redo that. PF3, drag and drop back, and let's get PF3 back to where it needs to be. Okay. Okay, and now I'm going to go into view outline mode. I want to grab my white, direct select, and I'm going to be especially careful this time now. You kind of just need to get in there and grab that box. Make sure that that box is all the way in the back. So right now it looks like it has no fill, no stroke. I'm going to go into group isolation mode, double click, find that box. You have to really zoom in and grab it right there. And I'm going to just double check. I want to make sure object arrange send to the back to make sure it's all the way to the back. When I go back to preview mode, I'm going to drag and drop again. Let's see. I think we should be better now. So I need to go into preview mode. I'm still in outline mode. Let's just take a look. Aha. So that box, I'm not sure how that happened. I don't remember how, but if it happens to you, you just have to kind of go through the steps that I just showed you. The repeat kind of got off. We lost our repeat because something about that box, either the box got filled with color when it was supposed to be no fill, no stroke, right? So that's our pattern defining box, right? And so either it got filled with color or perhaps it might have gotten rearranged in the stacking order. If it's not all the way to the back and if it's not no fill, no stroke, that's why we ended up with that wacky. See, it looked like that instead, which is not the correct repeat. This is the correct repeat. Okay, so actually let me put these guys off to the side, or I'm even going to just put them onto a different layer for now. Let's put them onto their own layer. Make a new layer, drag and drop that artwork, and then take the visibility off. Okay, so now we're back onto this layer. I just want to now wrap up the video by showing you finally, as promised, how we would get, you see that? We still have that background. It's still invisible. So how can I get that background to have a color? Well, we're going to leave our library, swatches, layers. We're going to leave all these guys behind. There's one more panel here that we're going to need to do that. We're going to go and grab from window. We're going to go to appearance to make sure that the appearance panel. And so this is the panel that's going to allow us to create a background color. It's very easy. You might not know, but in fact, even though it says that this is the pattern fill right here, you can always go to the side of the panel for the options and add a new fill. So you can have a second fill. So in other words, there's two fills right now. The one on the top can be the pattern. The one in the back could be a different color from your swatches. Maybe, let's see what would be a nice color. Maybe ice in the back, or maybe mist. I kind of like mist. Ooh, what about Gale green, right? So you can kind of play around. Let's settle for dew and let's zoom in and see what that looks like. All right, so let's review and see what we just did there. Under appearance, there was already this fill. This fill, when you see here, that one is that print, as you can see, right? I think that one was PF2. So the fill was already there. Stroke is 0. We went in and we did add new fill. And the fill that's underneath that pattern becomes the solid color of the background. But here's something actually kind of cool. You could also bring in a second pattern in the background, which is kind of cool. So can you see there's sort of some other patterns in the background there, which is really kind of cool. All right, so you can start to layer and get different effects. Okay, I'm going to settle for a nice solid color for now, but here's how you basically, this is why we don't need to worry about that pattern, that background color. We can just go ahead and have some fun, create our different colorways, different iterations, different variations, and that's how we can get that background color in. Okay, so once you would save this, for example, maybe you would put some color chips on the bottom to kind of show the colors that you used. Remember that when you're trying to decide on colorways, you don't necessarily even need to present your original gray swatches, right? And so once you have sort of a nice page of swatches with your color chips, that's something that, again, you're going to be trying to represent as much of your color palette as possible. Think about holistically. Let's look at this as thumbnails. Think about that color palette. Think about your different patterns that you've chosen and try to have sort of a nice representation of all those different colors to varying degrees, just so that we feel that holistically that pattern is represented. Okay, so that's how you're going to start coloring up your surface design, and make sure to check out the next video. The final step is bringing your surface design into your own technical flats, your own flats that you've created of your garments, your silhouettes, for the complete look. All right, but for now, practice. Make sure to ask any questions, like, subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you next time.